Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your shared sources and really pull out the key knowledge you need right now. Forget the info dump. We're aiming for those aha moments.
Yeah, exactly. And today, we're diving into Walt Brown's attractor Repel. It's all about building a healthy, effective organization, but with maybe a surprisingly human angle. It's got a lot of buzz, lots of endorsements.
It really does. And our mission today, basically, is to unpack Brown's core idea that attracting and keeping the right people isn't, about foosball tables. It's about meeting these, fundamental human needs and how that links to building what he calls a courageously patient organization, which sounds, pretty different from the usual chaos, right? We'll get into his BITE framework and the 7 critical needs.
Right, and those 7 critical needs are really the foundation. Brown didn't just invent them. He talks about how they came from watching successful teams, figuring out what really drives people, especially, millennials and Gen Z, but really everyone.
Okay, so what are they?
Okay, so the 7 are to belong, to believe, to be accountable, to be measured, to be heard, to be developed, and to be balanced. Pretty fundamental stuff, actually.
Yeah, they sound less like corporate buzzwords and more like, things people actually want.
Yeah.
So how does he connect these needs to that BITE framework you mentioned? Buy-in, inclusion.
Trust and engagement. Yeah. So BITE. Brown's argument is pretty simple. If you, as an organization, really focus on meeting those 7 needs properly, then BITE naturally follows. It's cause and effect. People feel they belong, they believe in the mission, they know what they're doing well, then they're going to buy in, feel included, trust leadership, and actually be engaged.
Right. It's like BITE is the outcome, the result of getting those needs met.
Exactly. And he even gives you tools like the BITE 7 survey and a BITE index to actually measure this stuff. It's not just theory.
Okay. Measurable organizational health. I like that. Now, that phrase, courageously patient organization, it's intriguing. What does that mean in practice, like day to day?
Well, it means having the guts, really, to tackle the tough issues, not just ignoring them or hoping they go away.
Like courage.
And patience. That's about playing the long game, understanding that building something strong, something healthy, it takes time. It's not about quick fixes or just reacting to the latest fire.
So it's the opposite of that sort of short-term reactive panic mode a lot of places seem to run on. Discipline, maybe?
Yeah, discipline and perspective, investing in the foundation instead of just patching leaks constantly.
Got it. Okay, let's dig into those 7 needs then. First one, to belong. What's the heart of that?
Belonging is all about core values, but importantly, authentic core values. Brown really hammers this point. These aren't just nice words on a poster.
Right.
They have to be the real internal principles that guide how people actually behave every day. They give people courage, he says, and he's very clear on what they're not. They're not goals, not obvious things like be honest, definitely not marketing slogans.
Okay, so not aspirational fluff.
No, and not accidental or political either. He mentions Patrick Lencioni's work here too, making values real. Operational.
So these are the deep down rules of how we interact, how we decide things. How do you actually make that happen? How do you build that belonging?
Well, one really concrete thing he talks about is the interview promise.
Interview promise.
Yeah. It's about being totally upfront with candidates about the core values, saying, look, this is who we are, this is how we operate. You need to align with this to succeed and be happy here.
Wow, that's direct.
It is. It's a filter, basically. It attracts the people who will fit, and just as crucial, it repels the ones who won't. Saves everyone a lot of pain later.
That makes so much sense. It actually reminds me, way back when we started my company, we had this informal thing we called BC3. It stood for positive, cheerful, cognizant, challenge your work, and ask 3 questions first.
Huh. Okay.
It was totally homegrown, probably a bit naive,
Yeah.
But it was our first crack at saying, this is the kind of person who thrives here, trying to get at that belonging piece.
That's a perfect example. That's exactly the kind of thinking. Okay, so next up is to believe. What's the key idea there?
Believing. This is about the why, isn't it? The purpose.
Precisely. Having a really clear, compelling why or a belief statement for the whole organization. And Brown makes a point of contrasting these short, powerful belief statements with those, long, rambling mission statements that nobody remembers.
Yeah, the ones that sound like they were written by committee.
Exactly. He shares his own, I believe in freedom, just as an example of something core and motivating. The point is, a strong why gives people motivation beyond just the paycheck.
Right, it gives meaning.
And it allows for what he calls courageous debate on strategy. Because if everyone's grounded in the same fundamental belief, you can argue about the how without, everything falling apart. He mentions Walker Auto and Truck seeing huge growth after they got really clear on their why.
It's like giving everyone a compass. So even if you disagree on the path, you're all heading generally north. Okay, next. To be accountable. This sounds like a big one. Where do companies mess this up?
Oh, everywhere. Brown says lack of clear accountability is like a massive source of frustration, and he pushes back on the idea that, younger generations don't want accountability. He says everyone, millennials, Gen Z, all employees, they want to know what's expected of them.
Yeah, ambiguity is killer.
Totally. They want to understand their role, their responsibilities, how their little piece fits into the big picture. If it's vague, even your most engaged people get demotivated fast.
It's like being told to do a good job, but with no specifics. You just flail around.
Exactly. And Brown brings in some philosophy here from HLA Hart, suggesting that clear roles are like promises. They create an obligation, a sense of accountability.
Interesting. Promises.
Yeah. And he also points out it's mostly on the organization, like 65%, to define accountability clearly. But the individual still has a big chunk, maybe 35% of responsibility to, understand it and own it.
Right, it's a shared responsibility. Okay, moving to be measured. Measurement can feel judgy. How does Brown frame it?
He frames it much more positively. He argues that understanding how and why you're measured is actually crucial for people to feel engaged and, frankly, to do well. Good metrics aren't just for report cards. They give direction. They help people figure out how to win, how to strategize. He talks about needing both long-term metrics, lagging indicators, and short-term ones to get the full picture.
So it gives clarity.
Clarity, yeah. And it connects directly to that SCARF model. Certainty and fairness especially. Good measurement reduces ambiguity and makes things feel more equitable.
Okay, so good metrics help people know where they stand and how to improve. What's the alternative? What's bad measurement look like?
Bad measurement is just like grabbing generic KPIs off the shelf without thinking if they actually fit your business or drive the right behaviors. Brown calls it lazy.
Lazy KPIs.
Yeah. He pushes for courageous custom metrics, and he has this great phrase for what happens without good measurement. Busy fool syndrome.
Huh. I think I know some people suffering from that. Lots of activity, not much progress.
Exactly. Running around like crazy, but because there are no clear, relevant metrics, a lot of that energy is just wasted.
Okay. Busy fool syndrome, adding that to my vocabulary. Next need. To be heard. What does that involve?
Being heard. It's really about clear, consistent communication channels. Pretty basic, but often overlooked. Brown stresses how important it is for leaders to actually listen, like actively listen.
Want to just wait for their turn to talk.
Right. And he talks about the role of a business operating system, a BOS, in setting up these structured ways to communicate. He also warns about relying too much on email or Slack.
Oh.
Yeah, he emphasizes the value of actual talking, verbal interaction, face-to-face meetings when possible. Stuff gets lost in text.
Totally. Tone, nuance, all gone.
Yeah.
So it's about creating real opportunities for dialogue. He mentions in and on meetings.
Yeah, that's a concept from Michael Gerber's E-Myth. In meetings are for the day-to-day stuff, keeping the wheels turning. On meetings are stepping back, looking at the business strategy improvement, the bigger picture.
Okay, tactical versus strategic.
Exactly. And you need both regularly. Brown also highlights a specific meeting type, the 7Q yeses seasonal meeting. It's a structured one-on-one.
7Q yeses.
Yeah, designed as a regular reset to check alignment, make sure individuals feel heard on a deeper level about their role, their progress concerns. It's a key mechanism for that being heard need.
Sounds like a really intentional way to check in.
Yeah.
Okay, sixth need, to be developed. How does Brown approach growth?
He sees development pretty broadly. It's not just formal training courses. It's coaching, getting new responsibilities, even support for changing personal habits if they impact work.
So on-the-job learning, mentoring.
All of it. But a key point is he believes development should be employee-led. The person has to want it, drive it. The organization's role is to support that, provide resources, create opportunities.
Empowering people to own their growth.
Yeah. He uses this phrase, 2 lives working on one, for good coaching. It benefits both the coach and the person being coached. And interestingly, he says, if you get the other 6 needs right, development pathways often just naturally open up for people.
Because the foundation is there, the trust, the clarity, the belief. Okay, last one. To be balanced. This feels like a huge topic today.
It is huge. Brown breaks balance down into 3 parts. Work-life integration, fair compensation, and health and wellness.
Okay.
And crucially, he says balance is totally individual. What works for me might not work for you. And it changes over time. So top-down, one-size-fits-all balance initiatives, they usually fail.
Right, because my idea of balance involves way more naps than yours, maybe.
Exactly. So the key is empowering people to manage their own balance.
Yeah.
That takes, guess what?
Trust, communication.
Bingo. Trust and good communication, which, again, you build by addressing the other 6 needs. He mentions Raz's idea that promises give us the ability to shape our lives, and he talks about the 3 balance influencers.
3 influencers.
Yeah. The tribe, basically, the company culture and expectations, your family, and yourself. Juggling those 3 requires honesty and trust.
It all comes back to that foundation. Okay, so you've mentioned this business operating system, the BOS, a few times. How does it tie all these needs together?
Well, think of a BOS like EOS, or scaling up, or Pinnacle, or even one you build yourself as the practical toolkit. It's the set of processes, meeting rhythms, and disciplines that help you consistently address those 7 needs.
It's the how.
It's the how. It helps you keep those 7 promises, essentially. Brown notes that even companies without a formal named BOS usually have some system, but it might have gaps. A good BOS makes it intentional and holistic.
And you mentioned a bite mapping guide.
Yeah, that's a tool in the book to help you look at your current DOS, whatever it is, and see how well it actually supports each of the 7 needs. It's very practical, ground-level stuff, not abstract theory.
So the BOS helps build that buy-in, inclusion, trust, engagement bite.
Precisely. It makes the organization more responsive, more resilient, because you're systematically tending to those core needs.
Makes sense. Now, Brown also really emphasizes the role of the leaders, the senior leadership team, SLT.
Oh, absolutely critical. He quotes Don Tinney and Gino Wickman. As the leadership team goes, so goes the rest of the organization. It's that fundamental.
So if the leadership team is dysfunctional,
it poisons the well. The whole organization struggles to align with those 7 needs. Brown is pretty blunt sometimes. Improving the organization's health means needing to, well, repel people from the leadership team who just aren't aligned.
wow. Tough, but necessary sometimes, I guess. The rot starts at the top, potentially.
Potentially, yeah. You need that healthy foundation at the leadership level first.
And the bite index you mentioned earlier. How does that function as a tool?
Think of the bite index as your organizational culture's pulse meter. It gives you a single number representing the net effect of buy-in, inclusion, trust, and engagement.
A single score.
Yeah. And the key is that it's repeatable. You can survey, review the results, make a plan, communicate it, act on it, and then measure again later to see if you've moved the needle.
So you can track progress.
Exactly. And he makes this really important point, I think it's in chapter 3, that one really negatively aligned person can basically cancel out the positive impact of someone else. So having a high overall bite score is really important for that net positive energy.
That underscores the repel part of the title too, maybe. Okay, you also briefly mentioned psychological safety and SCARF before. How do they fit in?
Right. So psychological safety, this comes from Amy Edmondson's work, and Google's Project Aristotle famously found it was the #1 factor in high-performing teams. It's basically, does the team feel safe enough to take risks, be vulnerable, speak up?
Okay. Essential for innovation, candor.
Totally. And Brown argues that when you consistently meet those 7 critical needs, you're naturally creating the conditions for psychological safety. You're building the trust, the sense of belonging, the feeling of being heard.
And the SCARF model. Status, certainty.
Autonomy, relatedness, fairness. Yeah, David Rock's model. It describes these 5 social domains that trigger strong threat or reward responses in our brains. Getting scar-fed, as Rock puts it, triggers a threat response, shuts down higher thinking, and definitely lowers bite. But Brown connects the dots. Meeting the 7 critical needs inherently helps satisfy those SCARF needs. Like, to belong feeds relatedness and status. To be measured clearly helps certainty and fairness.
So by focusing on the 7 needs, you're kind of automatically making the environment less threatening and more rewarding from a brain perspective.
That's the idea. You're creating an environment where people can use their best thinking, their system 2, rational brain, instead of just reacting from a place of threat.
Okay, that's a powerful connection. Now, Brown constantly frames these needs as 7 promises. Why that word, promises?
It's intentional. Framing them as promises highlights that these are commitments. Implicit, maybe, but still commitments the organization makes to its people.
Not just aspiration, but actual obligations.
Yeah. And promises, when you keep them, are incredibly powerful for building trust and cooperation. He references David Hume, the philosopher, talking about the kind of mysterious power promises have to create obligation.
Right.
But the flip side is that breaking promises. That destroys trust faster than almost anything else. So calling them promises really raises the stakes on consistently delivering on those 7 needs.
It really emphasizes the commitment required.
Which brings us back to the title, courage and patience. Why are those 2 qualities so central?
Because building this kind of high-bite organization, fulfilling those promises, it's not easy. It takes effort. It often means having hard conversations, making tough decisions. That takes courage.
Right.
He quotes C.S. Lewis saying, courage is basically the form of every virtue at the testing point. Your values don't mean much if you don't have the courage to stand by them when it's difficult.
And the patience part.
Patience is about understanding. It's a long game. It requires thoughtful action, not just knee-jerk reactions. It's about engaging that slow, deliberate, fact-based System 2 thinking we talked about. So not just sitting back, but thinking things through before acting.
Exactly. He contrasts it with the or loop. Observe, react of impatient people, the busy fools who don't stop to think. Courageous patience is aligned, accountable, authentic, aware. It's proactive, not just reactive, calm, focused.
A very different way of operating than many are used to.
Definitely.
Wow. Okay, this has been a fascinating deep dive into Walt Brown's Attract or Repel. We've really unpacked a lot, the 7 critical needs, building bite, that idea of being courageously patient, the role of a BOS.
Yeah, and the core message, I think, is pretty powerful. Focusing on these fundamental, almost basic human needs isn't just, the nice thing to do. It's actually the most effective path to building a truly successful, sustainable organization. It drives the business outcomes you want.
Absolutely. So a final thought for you, the listener. Thinking about your own workplace, which of Brown's 7 critical needs feels the strongest?
Yeah.
Where is your organization really delivering? And maybe, which one feels like the biggest gap, the biggest opportunity? Just looking at your own experience through that lens. Belong, believe, accountable, measured, heard, developed, balanced. It can be a really powerful way to understand what's working, what's not, and maybe start thinking about how to apply some of these ideas.
Definitely worth reflecting on.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.